because the tax rates and the licensing fee were set by the casino operators, because the state constitution of Ohio is being used to create a near permanent monopoly. So again, I said early on, you could argue all day long, very persuasively, the morality issue. You could argue whether it's a social issue, but that's not the debate that we're faced with here today.
You know, somebody asked earlier, how are you going to compete? Las Vegas is hurting, and Michigan has 19% for full-scale gaming. 19% they're paying. Indiana averages 25%. Pennsylvania has 55% with slots only, no requirement of billions plus of new construction buildings and urban cores, and not a lot of jobs behind slot machines. And currently in the Pennsylvania legislature, there's a 12 to 21% proposal for state gaming for tables. So, you know, when these guys go around and say this is a high tax rate, in fact, there's not a commercial full-blown. Maryland 67%. It took them 4 years to try to get somebody to even attempt to do a casino there, because most people think there's just no chance of even breaking even with that kind of tax rate. And so there's no higher tax rate really for full-scale gaming in the entire country than we're proposing. And we knew we wouldn't get it through without a high rate. So again, you know, in all due respect to the mayor, the people that call themselves truth beggars making this stuff up because the proposal's too good. And that's why they're going, you know, kind of off kilter here. The proposal's too good.
You have to make an apples-to-apples comparison against casinos, full casinos, not just casinos with table gaming. You know, I look like a pretty tall guy, maybe standing next to, you know, I don't mean this in a negative sense, but, you know, I can say I'm a tall guy, standing next to people who are you know, less than 6'2".
So standing next to former Michigan State University.
But if I stand next to LeBron James, I'm dwarfed. So it's all about making those comparisons. That's not a fair comparison for me to say, well, you know, maybe I'm a little taller than Mr. Gilbert, but at the same time, you know, his star athlete can come in and I look like peanuts. You have to make an apples-to-apples comparison. You can't take a certain tax rate and say, only compare us to these casinos that only have slots, and compare our tax rate on a full-blown casino with slots and table revenue. You have to make apples to apples.
I have to, because that's exactly what I'm saying, Mayor. That's exactly what I'm saying. When you look at the tax rate, you can't compare a 55% slots-only operation to a 33% full gaming that's got a requirement of $1 billion plus of infrastructure. That's exactly what I'm saying. So
but the majority of the money is made on slots.
Thank you, gentlemen. For the record, they almost agreed there. Thank you, audience, for the questions. I now have a final question for each of the gentlemen, the same question, with a time to respond of up to 3 minutes if you so choose. They will answer this question in the reverse order from the opening, so Mr. Williams will go first, followed by Mr. Gilbert. Nope, you're right. Mr. Gilbert will go first, followed by Mr. Williams. It just so happened, Dan, I happened to be driving by Mountaineer Casino last night, oddly enough. And I got to tell you, the parking lot did not look nearly as packed as I've seen it in past sojourns that way. So I want to hear from your research and your gut. Do you really feel there are truly enough gamblers in the region to guarantee success for 4 more gambling houses, given that Mountaineer and Greektown and Presque Isle and all these other sites don't plan on rolling out the welcome mat? They may, in fact, ramp up their efforts because they don't want to share the profits. So are we in for a big opening, maybe a good first year, and then disaster?
Is this is my final?
This is your, yeah, you got 3 minutes to do that.
So again, you hear some people in the room ask questions like, you know, is there too many casinos around? You'll have competition. Competition's great. Competition makes companies better. We welcome competition. So, you know, you can see how competitive those West Virginia folks are, you know, by the millions they're spending trying to prevent Ohio from even getting in the game, right? So here's the question. Think about this. I'm going to ask you in my last 3 minutes to ask yourself this question. So if there was an organization that were to come to any politicians in Ohio and say the following, here's what we want to do for Ohio. Forget what business they're in. They said, we want to build 4 massive infrastructure buildings in the core urban downtowns of $250 million or more, but probably, you know, more like $1.5 billion, right? And we want to start as soon as we can get this stuff approved and work with you to make it happen. And we want to create about $655 million of excess tax dollars, unlike your normal tax rate. By the way, that doesn't include corporate income tax, sales income tax, personal income tax, property tax, or anything like that. We don't want anything from Ohio to do this. Like you would have to, normally you would think, wow, in this world I could pit 12 states against each other and say, who's going to give me the biggest tax breaks? Instead, it's the opposite. It says, we're going to create 34,000 jobs in the state. We're going to try to revitalize and be a big piece of the urban core redevelopment. We're going to not only pay normal and regular taxes and not ask for anything and pay for all infrastructure, we're also going to put a 33%, not bottom line profit, top line revenue tax on top of all of that in an economy that's struggling. And by the way, the product and service that we sell is widely available in almost every state that surrounds your state, and your citizens are currently going there right now to the tune of thousands a week, spending $1.5 billion of their money, creating zero economic benefit, zero job creation, and zero taxation for Ohio citizens. And by the way, we love this business so much, and we're confident, we think it's going to do good. Let all your voters just vote and decide if they want to do this. And don't let the legislature and governor get in there, and everybody's got to try to agree, maybe, you know, because we've seen what they've done. They'll maybe suggest some slot machines in existing 70-year-old racetrack buildings in rural areas. And we'll come up with our plan. So what would Ohio politicians be doing if it wasn't gaming? They'd be, you know, it'd be like dying and going to heaven. It'd be the most unbelievable thing that's ever happened here. But now we've got the concept of gaming. And with gaming, you've got a lot of emotions. And we totally and fully respect people who take the moral argument on the other side. What we don't like is people that make stuff up because their arguments are failing on a proposal. This will be great for Ohio. That's why the unions, the mayors, most of the business people, the city councils, the NAACPs have all supported us. And we want to make this happen in Cleveland and Cincinnati and the other 2 cities that are on the ballot. And we've got to do something here. And you know what? It'll be up to Ohio citizens to make that choice on November 3rd.
Thank you, sir. Mayor, you have 3 minutes to do whatever you will do.
Mr. Gilbert set up a wonderful scenario where building 4 massive casinos, creating 34,000 jobs, $655 million in excess revenue, paying taxes, products and services widely available. Your citizens are doing it anyway, but failed to say all we want in return is your most sacred founding document, the Ohio Constitution, and we just want to make a few tweaks that creates a near-permanent lifetime monopoly. That's a pretty good deal, huh? Well, I say no, because the state's constitution can't be priced out. And if you're going to price it out, you would at least want to put it on a market to see what you could get for it, but we're not even asking for that. They're saying, give us the state's constitution, give us access to the constitution, because we can generate a few $100 million, even though we could probably end up paying more. We set the tax rates. Again, this isn't about democracy and trying to prevent people from voting. I agree wholeheartedly that the citizens of Ohio, who I also trust, should be voting on this proposal. But I also think that like the 4 times they've shot these schemes down in the past, they're going to see this for nothing more than another scheme. If Ohioans want gaming, they should have it. But they should have it, and it should be done right. It shouldn't be done at the expense of the Constitution, which protects the interests of over 11 million Ohioans. I believe we should create and stimulate jobs, but we should do it in a way that is sustainable and that, again, doesn't put our Constitution, I can't even say on the auction block because it's not on the auction block in Issue 3. I believe that when you talk about the obligation of the governor and state legislature, whether we like them or dislike them, agree with them or don't agree with them, they have a role to play. There is something to be said about having some degree of legislation and oversight. We've seen what happens on Wall Street when that goes south. We've seen what happens in so many instances when there's no transparency, oversight, or legislation when it comes to these issues. Again, I'm not here to fight the moral argument. People are going to do what they want to do. Ohioans are going to spend the money where they want to spend the money. I agree. Let's try to keep those dollars here. Let's create the jobs here. But when you talk about people who have supported this and people who have opposed it, the governor, Senator Voinovich, who was a former mayor of Cleveland, Senator Sherrod Brown, who can't agree on much of anything, have agreed that Issue 3 isn't the way to go. When you talk about the small businesses who will be destroyed as a result of those casinos, obviously they have some vested interest. I'm all for revitalizing downtowns, but not at the expense of the Ohio Constitution. The majority of Ohio's major newspapers have come out against Issue 3. Some of them are for gambling, but they're saying Issue 3 isn't the way to go. I believe that the Ohio voters should vote. I believe and uphold, and as mayor, I'm only mayor because it was a democratic process that allowed people to vote, so I'm for that. But again, the state's constitution can't have a value put on it. It can't. We can't afford as a state to say we're so desperate that we're willing to sell ourselves short for this temporary security. If we want Ohioans to have casinos or Ohioans want casinos, so be it. Let's do it, and let's do it right. Issue 3 isn't the right way to go.
Thank you both. Thank you, audience. Jen?
Nope, no more. Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a debate between Dan Gilbert in favor of Issue 3 and Mayor Jay Williams opposed to Issue 3. Issue 3 is Ohio's choice on whether to allow casino